With Brexit top of the agenda as her party conference gets underway, the Prime Minister will announce the plan to end the authority of European laws in Britain as well. Well, joining me from there is the Cabinet Minister, International Development Secretary Priti Patel. And a very good morning to you, Secretary of State. Right then, Article 50, triggered by the end of March next year. There are those, though, on your side of the referendum argument, Priti Patel, who say, well, given that the EU won't negotiate with us until we formally trigger Article 50, what is there to wait for? Why not do it now?
Well, look, you've heard the Prime Minister speak this morning. She has said, and she's speaking today, she's given her speech today, where she will outline, she's going to say that Article 50 will be triggered at the end of next March. But we are also saying that we are going to start the process by repealing the European Communities Act of 1972. And of course, this is the right approach because now this will give a very smooth and orderly process in terms of the negotiations that will follow, that will also lead to the triggering of Article 50.
Get on to that in a moment, but just staying with Article 50. 6 months more adrift, though. You will have heard the warnings from major car manufacturers last week saying they need some certainty as they make crucial investment decisions for production and ultimately for jobs. 6 months is quite a long time when those decisions are in the balance.
Well, we are already speaking to businesses and, manufacturing firms. In fact, my colleague David Davis and other Cabinet colleagues are having active discussions with them. So we're working to give certainty. And I think the fact that we have announced already that we're going to repeal the European Communities Act, we've now got a clear indication as to when Article 50 will be triggered. That gives certainty. And importantly, it gives confidences to businesses when it comes to investment decisions. But also it gives clarity now going forward in terms of regulations and legislation that we will ultimately stick with and the ones that we will look to through this entire process of repealing the European Communities Act, look to change to make sure that we are working in our national interests and delivering the best deal for Britain.
Well, answer that question then for me, Priti Patel. What will the government do with the 6 months before Article 50 is triggered? As I said, given the EU's official position, and we've heard it from so many quarters within EU member countries, that they will not have any pre-negotiations.
Well, look, I mean, we're not going to give a running commentary in terms of what other European nations and countries are saying. Our Prime Minister has given the greatest degree of clarity in terms of what we are doing. And actually, we are going to deliver Brexit for the British public, which is exactly what they voted for. And at the same time, we're outlining now the approach that we are taking. We are going to repeal the European Communities Act. Article 50 will be triggered next year by the end of March. And there is a whole raft of work that's taking place across Whitehall, across government departments. We'll hear from David Davis later on today as well, where he, will speak much more about the approach that we are taking across government departments in particular, and looking at the raft of legislation that will feature in terms of the negotiation and also the repeal of the European Communities Act.
Well, let's talk about that great repeal bill, as it's being called now. So as we understand it, then the bill goes through, but the laws remain until the formal exit takes place sometime in 2019.
Well, we are saying that we are going to repeal the legislation, the European Communities Act, which of course took us into the membership of the European Union and basically meant that our laws and regulations were determined by the European Union. So we will publish a bill in the next Queen's speech. And by publishing that bill, we will set the framework and make it quite clear that obviously we will keep the laws that currently exist and start working across every single government department. And those discussions are taking place now. Work across in government departments to see where we need to, make the changes on outdated regulation, legislation, and the things that simply do not work in our national interest.
So keep all those laws, as you said, they're prepared to repeal them, and then unpick them one by one. Have you got any estimate about how long all that will take?
Well, there'll be a parliamentary process, of course, and that's the point of having legislation. You have clauses, you have a bill, and we will work through that process. The point that I would emphasise is, of course, that is now the work that's being undertaken through the department to leave the European Union in terms of working with every single government department. Let's not forget, we've had legislation over 44 years, so there'll be a lot of legislation, but also there'll be some outdated legislations as well that will need to come off the statute book, and we will make sure that we have the right legislation. You know, we're going to give Parliament its sovereignty back. We're going to be making sure that we are control of British laws in a way in which we simply have not been because of our membership of the European Union.